And Matt is going to talk to us today about working from home, and is it the future or not of work, since as many of you have experienced during the COVID-19, with the lockdown, many companies implemented work from home, especially if they were working services and with sometimes expats working from abroad. So is it going to be like this I mean, in the future, or was it just an exception in the history, I would say? So thank you, Matt, and I will leave you to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And please do feel free to ask any questions along the way. In fact, not just from you, for the audience. I think I would like to make this as engaging as possible for everybody. So I guess I'll share my screen. One sec. Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So yeah, thank you for the introduction, Guillaume. So we've known each other for many years now. I've been in Myanmar for about 6 years, and I've been part of the team that co-founded JobNet. As hopefully most of you are familiar with, we are a job site and a platform for recruitment in Myanmar. So I don't know who really is in the audience today. I hope, please do ask me lots of questions, because otherwise it's hard to know what really brings you value. If you're a new person coming to Myanmar from abroad, or you've been here for many years, I think that the conversation is quite different depending on where you come from. So JobNet is an online job site. As we mentioned, it's the most visited job site. Over 750,000 people per month visit in search for jobs. And that's kind of puts us in the middle of the recruitment demand and supply. So we are always able to look at both sides of the story and analyze data to understand trends in the market. What do we do in Myanmar? We do 3 main things. One is the online recruitment software and platform. So not just the job site and posting of job ads, but also the back-end infrastructure for the recruitment process. We organize big job fairs. Unfortunately, in this period of the year, given the situation, we have been forced to cancel all the job fairs, but we have a Singapore virtual job fair coming up very soon. And then from time to time, we organize, just like we have done with CCI France many times together, HR industry support events, be it big conferences or small workshops, or for example, the Myanmar Employer Awards campaign, and this year, the new campaign called Best Companies to Work in Myanmar. So what are we going to talk about today? Work from home. I have split that in 2 different parts. One is I'm going to present to you some of the results of a recent work from home survey we have done. And secondly, I want to give you what I think are some interesting work from home kind of bite-sized pieces of HR advice that I have learned from the market and from real experts that have joined us recently at a webinar. So let's have a look at the data, and I think I want to start on a positive note, and that is that the numbers are starting to pick up. So if we look at the number of jobs posted on JobNet, it is again on the rise. There is no denying that the number of jobs has certainly fallen catastrophically over the last couple of months, because recruitment has definitely been one thing that companies have put on hold, and as proven by the sharp drop over March, April, and May. But we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, it depends on certain industries, but overall, we are quite pleased to see that companies are starting to reopen a lot of the vacancies that opened pre-corona crisis. Interestingly, on the other hand, on the job seeker side, one might assume that because a lot of people have lost their jobs, or there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, that the number of people searching for jobs would have spiked dramatically, but that actually has not been the case. I think that has been stable, as shown by the graph on the right. We look at the number of visits on JobNet, that has been pretty stable throughout the corona crisis. And yeah, I think that's also a mix of perhaps the uncertainty that people have about transitioning to different roles, let alone, of course, the obvious sharp drop in demand for talent in this period as well. So I think as many of us have been experiencing over the last couple of months, the biggest change, of course, has been working from home for most of us. And I think one of the questions that really got me thinking throughout this has been about this, right? Is it really about work from home, or are we on track for a future where perhaps work is from anywhere, right? And I think while this question might have sounded absolutely crazy a decade or two ago, it really has become more obvious these days that perhaps there is some truth in that. And to different degrees, of course, of truth. But I do think that Myanmar included, we are going to experience significant change over the next year. We did a survey in the last couple of weeks to our audience of working professionals through our JobNet. And with a sample of about 500 responses, these are the results. So these are just some demographic numbers about who we interviewed, but basically it's people with at least 5 years of experience for the most part, and quite a good balance between local and international companies. About 72% have been working from home. Again, by law, people were required to work from home. Of course, it means that 28% of people were working in what the government considered essential industries. Interestingly, from international companies, of course, there's more people working from home. I think this is just, again, just the way the data is sliced and depending on the responses, very likely and clearly from the data, there were more companies, local companies operating into the essential industries. So the data shows us that as of this week already, almost half of the people are fully back at the office, which is something that I wasn't expecting as well, because at JobNet, we are still 100% remote. But yeah, for the most part, it looks like, in fact, not just 50% are full-time, but also 25% are back on a flexible schedule. So almost 75% of all respondents are already in one way or another back in the office. So definitely things are starting to reopen. And again, this is definitely a good sign. Interestingly, local companies are the ones that actually have been opening up earlier and more, to a bigger degree, people are back full-time within the local company segment rather than internationals. This is showing us overall how long people have been working from home over the last couple of months. So I think as expected, there's a pretty healthy balance between 1 and 3 months. But interestingly, 41% have been working less than 1 month from home, meaning that either the companies were relatively late to react to the work from home situation, or they have reopened earlier than most companies. Interestingly, the number one reason why people have chosen what is the most enjoyable part about working from home really has been about no travel to office. I think as expected, Yangon still presents a number of mobility challenges, and very clearly the most enjoyable part has been not needing to spend 1-2 hours per day commuting to an office. Followed by, of course, more time with family and more personal time as well. Some of this information, I believe, is quite relevant also from an HR strategy point of view. How can HR or any, a company in general understand that travel to office really is just such a big pain point of most people? And I think this is going to be kind of the grounding foundation on which I believe the whole work from home narrative is going to be built, right? Because if 31% of the workforce tells you that really going to the office is probably one of the least enjoyable things to do, especially in a city that really presents such mobility challenges, then I think that is a great starting point to then figure out, okay, then how do we create a situation where work from home becomes more of a reality than it was before. But of course, working from home doesn't come without its challenges. By far, the number one reason chosen as the biggest challenge has been slow internet. In hindsight, yeah, it's quite obvious, I would say, but it is good to see data support that. It means that there is still a long way to go for, of course, people to adopt stable internet at home, and of course for internet providers to penetrate the market further. Power cuts also has been the third reason. So we're talking about structural issues that it will take time to fix, but I do think that it is going to be a combination of forces, essentially helping to accelerate the fixing of these problems. As internet companies realize that there's so much more potential and it is such a big need, on the other hand, companies realizing that is such a big deterrent from people also working from home. So I think the combination of these might result in perhaps even better internet plans and perhaps even some kind of subsidies from companies to incentivize people to to get good internet at home. But the second biggest challenge, as represented by this survey, has been really about people feeling that working hours have been extended into personal time, and I think we've all been subject to that in one shape or form. As expected, quite a lot of people have been having power cuts. So it's quite balanced in terms of the people that have or have not. But luckily, only 15% of respondents declared that, yes, they had a power cut, and it has definitely been an issue when it comes to productivity. This could be a good presentation to start with when pitching to the Ministry of Electricity, perhaps. Productivity has been on average the same or lower. And I think perhaps this has also been influenced over time. So perhaps at the beginning, everybody thought a little bit more motivated to be at home and so on. And then over time, as the monotony of being in the same place and so on and so forth settled in, perhaps resulted in a bit of a decrease overall in motivation and productivity. So here, interestingly, while internet is definitely the biggest challenge for people to work from home, it isn't the biggest benefit why people would want to go back to the office. And I think this outlines that really, as humans, we are designed to socialize. We crave social settings, and in some way, having the first choice by people to see my colleagues is the number one reason why people want to go back to the office. Really puts things in perspective and gives us a healthy reminder of really what a company is a group of people assembled together to produce a product and service, and that collaboration between humans is just such an essential part of our working life. So it's a bit of a balance that over time we're going to figure out how the world sort of sorts itself out. On the one hand, we like the independence of working from home, we like the flexibility. On the other, we do crave a social setting, meeting people, telling stories and actually seeing each other in a physical setting. So I don't think there's ever going to be a balance, like an extreme to the other. This shows us that we do have different needs and different desires, and I think the balance will be set by nature and by the market. Most companies are quite pleased. Most people are quite pleased by how companies have reacted. Only a small percentage of people haven't felt that companies haven't really assisted their own employees to a reasonable degree. And again, this kind of wraps it up and really shows us that when people get asked, do you want to go back to the office? Sure, I do want to go for these and these reasons, but then also, do you want to go for how long? And this shows us really that there is a balance probably in between 1 to 2 days a week that the vast majority of people would like to settle on, as proven, as shown by this. I do foresee this being a very big part of HR strategy over the next 12 months, probably one of the biggest changes overall in terms of the strategy that companies and the conversation at the roundtable will be different. HR departments, business leaders, CEOs and so on will have to understand that unless this is such a relevant topic these days that you have to be on top of it if you want to be a relevant employer, and even more, you have to be on top of it if you want to be and continue to be an employer of choice, right? Which fits into the whole employer branding narrative. You cannot just simply move forward and neglect, as a business, if you want to be successful, the whole work from home situation. And the data clearly shows us why. This is a excerpt from the best companies in Myanmar employee engagement survey that we have recently done. And just a few, so people could choose between 1 and 7, 1 being strictly dissatisfied and 7 strongly satisfied. Strongly disagree, pardon me, and strongly agree, 7. And it really shows us that, you know, number one, I've sorted the answers from highest to lowest score. And what shows us is that on average, most people do agree that most of the companies have a solid plan forward to survive the COVID-19 crisis, which is very reassuring. And by the way, this is based on a sample data of about 800 responses, so quite representative among working professionals of you know, top-tier companies in Myanmar. So it is very reassuring to see that people have optimism in their businesses, people have confidence in their businesses, and the data supports that claim. Whereas on the other hand, if we look at, again, productivity and so on, again, this is also in line with what we've seen earlier with the other survey. You know, the average score drops significantly when people get asked about their productivity levels, and tied in with motivation, which of course are in line with one another. You know, it does not mean that people will not be able to be productive from home. It does not mean people will not be able to be motivated. It simply means that there's going to be a period of adjustment where everybody learns how to become more productive at home and how to be more self-motivated and so on. You know, the whole humankind has somewhat been put through an experiment over the last couple of months. And I think there's a lot of figuring out that still needs to happen, a lot of adjustment, both on the, you know, on a personal individual level, of course, also on the employer side with better policies, better support systems, and you know, overall more robust strategies to be able to support work from home. Here's an ongoing survey by CCI France. So I would like to thank you, Guillaume and CCI France, for being able to share this with me before it goes out. But I do encourage everybody to keep an eye on the CCI France pages and membership news. There's going to be more results coming out. But this is really interesting. It really shows us that 30 companies have been surveyed, and they've been asked the question, you know, what are the measures you've taken in response to the pandemic? And by far, the number one has been digitalization of activity and your processes within your organization, right? So this really pleases me, not just because, of course, JobNet is a tech business, and we really do stand by the vision of digitizing every process in any organization, but it does give me, you know, this kind of really shows that, you know, we are starting to walk the talk, right? And that's very important. Everybody says all the time, digitizing, but it is very comforting to see that, you know, to a great degree, businesses are actually starting to do it. Needless to say, because we are, of course, dealing with one of the largest and, you know, most severe and fastest and confusing crises of all time, reduction of salaries and other cost-cutting measures have been absolutely necessary for most businesses, as outlined by this survey. And, you know, we were just talking earlier that reduction of salary is just one part, but of course there is unpaid leave, there is reduction of hours, and so on and so forth. So, you know, unfortunately, businesses have to, you know, survive throughout these periods, and unfortunately, reduction of costs is the only way. When asked what have been the main challenges for your company during the pandemic, obviously in support of cost-cutting measures, by far the number one reason has been maintaining cash flow, right? As you know, as probably expected. Forward, so you know, not great news for JobNet, but I suppose we are starting to see a rebound. But it, you know, and this goes also in, it is very much in line with what we've seen. Virtually, I would say 90+% of all companies have stopped all recruitment over the last couple of months. It has been very tough, of course, and it is also understandable because when you don't know what the, you know, short term looks like, you are very likely to put, you know, recruitment on a freeze. the last graph shows us that in line with the other survey, about more than half of businesses are already reopened. Okay, so this is good to know in case you are still at home. Yeah, and so here, recently we've had a lot of conversations with HR managers and so on, and there's been three things that really stood out when it came to really outlining what have been the biggest challenges from HR managers' perspectives, right? So the first and foremost challenge has been managing the well-being of the workforce, right? Both, you know, more, you know, on a morale point of view, but also on a systems and processes, so to speak, point of view, right? So really ensuring that the transition to working from home has been as smooth as possible. And HR managers have definitely felt that to be the biggest challenge, as outlined by predominantly our customers whom we have asked. Interestingly, one of the comments you know, that we've received quite frequently has been this idea that out of sight means out of mind, right? And so this idea that without seeing people every day, without communicating in person every day, this does result in a somewhat missing sense of community, right? For those companies, and particularly large companies that haven't established formal internship programs or fresh grads traineeship programs and so on, a lot of these companies have told us that it has been an absolute challenge to be able to manage that process well, right? If you think about it, fresh grads and, you know, graduate programs, internships, entry-level people that have just joined, those are typically the people that really require some of them, sort of a lot of the attention at the beginning, with a lot of onboarding programs, a lot of training, a lot of you know, mentoring one-on-one. So without that in-person supervision, a lot of the companies have felt you know, that to be one of the biggest challenges. Oops. Okay, I do want to also outline that, you know, while the work from home period and the crisis in general has, without a doubt, really presented us with many, many challenges, I do want us to realize that it does present a number of opportunities as well. And I think for professionals in any field, in any company of any seniority, we should understand that challenges are always opportunities, and particularly in the way we react to it, right? So I do think, you know, perhaps some of these points could be useful for you to think about perhaps envisioning this period as a training period, right? It is tough, like all good trainings. Nobody goes to the gym to just sit down for 2 seconds and go back home, right? There's always a level of discomfort or pain or you know, or challenge in a sense that leads to a result, a positive result. And so while it is without a doubt a challenging period, I would encourage anybody to try and find the time to reflect on the fact of how we can use this as an opportunity to grow. Train for resilience and strength, right? So that's crucial, I believe, for anyone to be successful, really, in whatever you do. Personally, you know, it's been a time where everybody's character has been through a stress test, right? Whether you're a CEO of a company or the person that has just joined, everybody has been through a lot of stress. I do think this period can also be an opportunity for people to earn the trust of their peers and particularly of their superiors by showcasing flexibility and demonstrating overall that you are leadership material of the future, right? It is in the tough times where people should roll up their sleeves and demonstrate to the best of their ability that they want to be a leader in the future. So hopefully this is trying to, you know, get the point across that it is, we cannot fix the global situation. It is happening in Myanmar, everywhere in the world, but it is how we react to it that will make a difference. And so it doesn't matter whether Myanmar is a nascent economy and so on. Reacting to a crisis is something that just takes effort and, you know, sort of like good energy. And I do think that, especially because Myanmar presents so many opportunities, if we look at it in the medium long term, right? Let's forget about this for a second, but in a year's time and so on, things will be hopefully back to almost where we were before in one shape or form, right? But it will be the people that react to this crisis in this time that will be remembered and will enjoy the benefits after. And hopefully, one of the things is also, again, with less travel time, and I do recognize most people take at least 1 or 2 hours per day to get to work. Now, this is all time that is being saved, right? So why not invest that time in something productive or useful for our own careers? And I know, just leaving out there a quote that I think is quite relevant. It is really, be a master of your destiny instead of a victim of your history, right? And we are all, in a sense, victim of our own history and of what has happened in the past. Let's really try the best we can to be the masters of our own destiny. So I think from an HR point of view, some of the bite-sized technical, practical advice that you can implement in your business tomorrow, we had a really interesting HR webinar on COVID-19 about a month ago, which is also live on our YouTube channel on JobNet. And here are some interesting takeaways, which hopefully can make you think and give you some ideas about how you can implement some of these in your company. These are all, chunks of advice given by practically some of the leading HR experts in Myanmar from the 4 companies you see represented there. I'll just go one by one and recall the conversation we have with them and sum it up. But essentially, always have a plan as an HR department or any department to plan for the worst. Always have a contingency plan. A lot of companies were caught off guard in the period between probably February into March because there was no plan yet, right? Hopefully this has given everybody a wake-up call about how important really is it to have a plan of some kind, have a task force team ready for when things happen, such that you can react very, very fast. AIA Myanmar, I recall saying that they were very quickly able to switch to online training. Of course, this also depends on the resources that any company has, but don't forget that these days you can find anything online. So as an HR professional, as a leader of a business, knowing that you can administer online training at any time of the day is very possible these days. And finally, AIA also had administered a singing contest. So I think companies, especially HR departments who always think about engagement of employees and so on, finding more creative ways to engage your employees has been something that a lot of companies have been forced to think about in this period. One point that I want to highlight out of this is the third last one about authenticity. And this was very, very it was very crucial to how KBZ and Prudential truly manage this process. KBZ stands by a number of values, meta and a few others, and it was very clear to me how that became the central pillar of all their communications throughout this crisis. And that is truly a sign of not only a brilliant HR strategy, but also of something bigger, right? And I think that is really something that we should all think about, whether are we running our businesses based on certain principles? Are they being communicated frequently? And even more so during a time of crisis, are those used to sort of like establish the ground on which we build the policies and communicate things to our own people, right? And that is connected with the authenticity of communication. This is not a time to sort of make false promises. This is not a time to, this is really a time to be honest and transparent about the business situation, about the economy, about the struggles of the business, and about all the things that any business is doing to help mitigate this crisis. And this was particularly evident by Prudential Myanmar, who mentioned that they've all of a sudden employed a number of channels they were not using before. They've launched surveys, they've done virtual town halls, WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, and so on, really to just improve that authenticity of communication to every single person in their organization. Again, the last part, and this brings me to a conclusion, is really about the silver linings of a crisis. Again, I'm an optimist by nature, you can say, so I think that professionals should look at this period as a test and really a period to build resilience. And on the other hand, businesses should use this crisis to also perhaps re-envision their policies. Like KBZ Pay, for example, is using this period as a way to, how more people can accelerate a transition to cashless society and so on. Prudential, for example, a good piece of advice was, employer branding never stops, right? You will never be stopped. People will always continue to judge you as an employer in the good times and in the bad times, right? And so Prudential made a point about this. They said that, you know, employer branding, people post and share a lot more even now how our organizations are handling the situation, right? So what an opportunity for businesses to display all the good things they're doing in order to enhance even further the image they have in the market as a good employer. And I tell you that in conclusion, as JobNet, we see this consistently day in, day out. Employer brand matters. And while a lot of the international companies, of course, are already on top of this, there is, that's probably 2% of the market, right? The rest of the market still is quite far behind in terms of understanding the importance of employer brand and having a strategy in place to deliver that. And it doesn't really matter how big you are of a company. You can be small or big, a lot of money, little money, doesn't matter. Having a plan is necessary and should be, in any case, mandatory of any business plan. So I would like to open to any Q&As. This brings me really to the end. I have just one more slide at the end to show you about what JobNet has been doing, but I wonder if there's any questions. No questions so far. But Guillaume, perhaps you have some questions. Otherwise, I will continue. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I had a problem with my computer. No, it's okay. Thank you. Yeah, yes. Thank you for the presentation of the first results of the survey that we are running. So hopefully we'll have more data in a few days, I hope. But no, thank you for your presentation. I hope that all the attendees, they have some questions regarding your presentation.
Yep. Yeah, so far no questions. I mean, I have put my email at the end as well in case anybody wants to reach out. What can happen for the recruitment agency in the future? Okay, so I see a question. What can happen in the future for recruitment agencies in the future? So I would suspect this means about the survival of the recruitment agency model, perhaps in the future. Well, I think there will always be a need for an agency for sure. So we just have to go through this, and just like any business, you want to become the best you can, right? And understand how. So I think in any market, there will always be a need for a good quality agency, right? So we have very strong partners we work with, for example, like My World and so on. So who have absolutely grown the market. So yep, I think the future is okay. We just need to go through this period, and demand will definitely pick up again.
Actually, I have a question also for you, Matt. I mean, what do you think would be the future of digitalization, but like a permanent solution, but only for some parts of the employees? I mean, some like, let's say companies could perhaps save some money by asking their finance department to work from home full time, since that way they don't have to pay for like a larger office, etc. What would be the benefits versus bad side of this kind of solutions, permanent solutions for companies?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's hard to say, right? I think if I look at just the data, right? So I can tell you probably 100 years in the future, who knows, right? Maybe in 100 years, nobody will work. But the point is, if I just look at the data, right? What the data is really showing us is that people crave social interaction, right? That is by far the #1 reason why people want to go back to the office. So I do not think there is a future where whole departments are 100% remote, right? And I think there will have to be some social interaction, because I think that's what data shows us. People want to be part of a community, and just being together, it's just different than being remote, right? Does it mean that it cannot be to 90% remote? No, I think that's possible, right? We have been working, frankly, very successfully from home for 3 months as JobNet. And in fact, not just JobNet, also Shui Property. So that's about over 100 people, right? So with frankly, very little disturbance. So it is definitely possible. But I can tell you already that after 2-3 months, we are already like, okay, when do we want to go back? And, you know, at least a few days a week, we crave being a team. You know, we are a super strong team, and we really want to, you know, it's kind of, it's just different, right? I mean, that's also my personal opinion. I mean, there's no doubt that the trend has been certainly adopting more and more technology to provide more flexibility. But I don't think whole departments will be able to work completely remotely. Unless it is designed, unless the job is designed to be that way. You know, if you're like a regional representative or an organization that has to be out there all the time, right? But there, I mean, there's still so much more rate for sort of remote. We are just at the beginning for sure. And I think it would be very fascinating to see this in Myanmar, because there's no doubt, I mean, it is almost a certain thing that in the next 12 months, we will see, guaranteed, a lot of the big organizations obviously leading this, because they are large organizations that bring best practices and resources to kind of like transition this for a lot, and then the rest will follow. And we have seen in many ways also in recruitment technology, right? We've been selling this kind of recruitment software for now 5 years, and it is like with any technology, there is a curve of adoption, right? You have the early adopters, you have, and so on and so forth, and everybody follows after that, right? So of course, the first companies to jump on JobNet fully understand the full product and capabilities, but of course, the larger organizations with modern teams and so on. But then, you know, after you see the next level and the next level and the next level. And I think very similarly, this will happen with work from home policies. I would not be surprised within the next few months, we will already hear from large international organizations operating in Myanmar already announcing quite sort of like headline making policies about work from home, right? And I think then they will ignite the next wave, which I think, to be fair, and kind of, again, trying to always be optimistic about the story, but again, if you think that all this has happened in like 5 years in Myanmar, I mean, that's a textbook case study, I think. Like from no digital to like work from home remote within 5 years, the history of a country. I mean, that's just mind-boggling, right? So quite fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, I'm just going to continue. I know we're out of time, so I just want to quickly recap about, I guess, what do we do at JobNet? This kind of sums it up. I think it is in line with the whole work from home narrative. It's really how we can help you take all the paper CVs, all the systems and processes that are currently manual, and transition them online with our software platform, which builds the whole backend recruitment software for you. It's not just about posting jobs. It's not just about reviewing CVs. It's a lot more. It's the whole backend infrastructure software we can build for you as well. I've also, you know, a word of appreciation for CCI as well for supporting the Best Companies to Work in Myanmar program. It's a new campaign that we have launched this year, and it will help any company enhance their employer brand and also get a very, very close and accurate insight about the employee engagement levels within their organization. So it's based on an online employee engagement survey. And after the survey is done, we send you a very, very detailed report, including a benchmarking study about how you compare to the rest of the industry. So if you're interested about knowing, you know, which department of yours, for example, is less engaged compared to the others, or which area of engagement within your organization, whether it's work environment or leadership or communication, how do you compare compared to the others in the market, then this is the kind of thing that you want to do. MEA is coming up, so MEA is definitely restarting on July 7th. There's a few changes, nothing major, the same categories as last year. So I encourage everybody to have a look. And if you want to find out more, MyanmarEmployerAwards.com, it's where all the information is. And a special shout out, of course, to Yoma Bank, who has this year also become our main sponsor. So thank you. This is my email. And if you do have any more questions, please let me know.
Thank you very much, Matt. I think it's just the beginning of this kind of webinar regarding HR, because as you said, there are so many things going on and so many changes. I mean, the COVID is not finished, so we'll see, probably we'll have more companies adapting.
Absolutely.
On, yeah.
And hopefully what's happening in Beijing doesn't happen here. So,
we'll see.
you know, yeah.
Well,
okay.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, everybody,
thank you.
for attending.
Thank you for having me.
At your disposal for more information. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks.